This is Entrepreneurship Goes Green. And why Entrepreneurship Goes Green? I'm gonna tell you that in a minute. But first of all, we gotta get started with some practicalities. Who is behind it? Many student associations. We are 5. We work all together for the event from the very beginning. And why 5 and not only 1? Well, that's because we wanted to show you guys that we have to team up, that we cannot stay constrained in the walls of the university, but we have to go out and talk to people that think utterly differently. And we decided to do it ourselves before telling you guys to do so, being the good example. We also have to thank our sponsors, Foundation for Entrepreneurship Denmark, Science DTU is the science park in DTU, and Shell. Thanks. Some practicalities again. So we love social networks. You guys, you can tweet live. I suggest you to use that hashtag. And for those that don't know it yet, we are streaming live, and you can see the link on our Facebook page. So you can simply click on it or share it with your friends and say, hey, I'm here. Some key figures. Well, organizing such a conference was not like drinking a cup of tea. 3 keynote speakers, 9 startups, 15 partnerships, 130 plus attendees, 4 countries, I mean, from where you guys bought the tickets, but more than 10 nationalities. We got more than 1,000 visitors on our internet site and more than 4,000 page viewed. And this is all volunteer work. The why. Sometimes when I talk to people, they say that there's always someone who is better than you and getting a message out. And that's actually a good point. So instead of telling you the why, I'm gonna show it to you. It's a brief video. So maybe there is something wrong. But we are here to understand why. There's a crisis going on. We all know it. The spread is spiking. Countries have no money to pay for public jobs. And the young generation have no jobs. And how can we fix it? How can we actually try to change this model that it's clear, it's not leading us anywhere? Well, we thought about it. We brainstormed about it. And we thought that actually young guys have a huge potential here. I work with them day by day. I see them in the classroom. I see them working with them. We can do it. And I'm pretty confident that we can. Why? Because there's plenty of great ideas inside of you. You all know it. You just don't know that there's partnerships that can be established, that there are associations that can help you to actually push this idea out, that can help you to turn this idea into a market, into a business, and therefore create jobs and create solutions. There was a guy called Gandhi. I think we all know it. He was saying that we need to be the change we wish to see in this world. And this is an example. We want to show you guys that by teaming up, by working together, we can make change happen. So there is a way out. There is a way out. We can picture our future the way we want it to be. And I'm pretty confident about it. And I close my very brief talk with another very small video. That's a little bit more funny than the one that we've seen before. That's about my favorite movie. Our future hasn't been written yet, so let's create a good one for all of us. Thank you all, and welcome to Entrepreneurship Goes Green. We start with our first keynote speaker. She's called Katherine Richardson. She's the Vice Dean at the Faculty of Science in KU, and she was the chairman of the Danish Government Commission on Climate Change Policy. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Is there a pointer? Yeah, but there's no pointer if I... Never mind. We'll figure it out without a pointer. That's okay. Okay. The last speaker said very eloquently, I feel very confident that you can do it. I'm standing here, I'm going to say very confidently, I feel very confident that you have to do it. The last speaker showed a very moving film. It appealed to your heart. I'm going to try and appeal to your minds, because the combination of heart and mind is what really makes things go forward. But in order to discuss, I want to talk about why I'm saying you have to do it. And in order to discuss that, I think it's easier or better if we try and take the helicopter view and move away for a little, move a few steps back from where we are and what we're discussing right now. Humans have always, in fact all organisms, have always been dependent on natural resources for our survival. That part hasn't changed. But our relationship, our understanding of the relationship between humans and the planet has changed in all the time that humans have been here. From the very beginning of recorded history, we know that humans were interested in understanding how nature worked. How did the sun get there? Oh, well, that was very easy. If you had religion, it was a golden chariot that was filled up with fire every morning. Why do we have thunder? Oh, well, then the gods were angry with each other, and they took pan lids and they hit them together, and that made the thunder that was there. So understanding the relationship between humans and nature was really very easy in the beginning, when it was only done through religion. What is religion? Religion is when you believe in something that you can't document. You just believe in it. It's a very happy state to be in. Fortunately, although I guess some people would maybe say unfortunately if they're running for President of the United States right now, fortunately, science came into the picture. And science, what is science? Science is where you have some evidence, some documentation. You try and find the best explanation that you can for that documentation, and you put that explanation forward to others and ask them, challenge them to find a better explanation for the results that you find. Often, the interface between religion and science is a bloody battlefield. Just think about poor Galileo. In 1633, the man was forced by the church, that's religion again, doesn't always have to be organized within a church, but in 1633, Galileo was forced by the church to denounce, everybody says he did it with his fingers crossed behind his back, but to denounce the fact that he believed that the earth revolves around the sun and not vice versa. Interestingly, it took the church over 300 years to actually get around to apologizing to Galileo for this injustice. In 1992, Pope John Paul expressed regret and actually declared he believed there had been some errors committed by the church tribunal that judged the scientific position of Galileo Galilei. Now, I think the next really big confrontation there was between, and of course one of the reasons why Galileo, it was Copernicus that came up with the original idea, but why these ideas about the earth revolving around the sun and not vice versa were difficult was because that challenged the way people thought about themselves and their relationship to the planet and to nature. I think the next great confrontation between religion and science came in 1859 when Charles Darwin published his book on the origin of species. Now, what did Darwin really do? Darwin challenged the way humans thought about themselves and their relationship to nature. The Bible, we're back to the church and religion, by the way, the Bible had taught people in 1859 that they were better than nature. They were above nature. They were supposed to bring civilization to the wildness, the uncultivated nature. In fact, even the poor old fish are supposed to be controlled by man. I'm not sure how that's supposed to be. Along comes this scientist and says, we're not better than nature. We're part of nature. We're a species, like all others. In fact, we're an ape species. That was difficult. That was really difficult. But what else did he do? He challenged the economic paradigm of 1859 because there were very, very many men, and I'm sorry, ladies, it was men who were did the thinking then. There were very many men in 1859 that didn't think you could have economic growth or economic stability if you didn't have slaves. And this scientist comes along and says, hey, those aren't animals you're buying and selling. It's your brothers. Kind of takes the carpet right out from underneath the business, doesn't it? Even over 150 years later, it's worth noting that some schools in the most powerful country on earth still aren't allowed to teach about Darwin's evolution or Darwin's theory of evolution. I think we're in the next major confrontation between science and human understanding or religion, the religious beliefs about how the humans relate to nature and to the earth now. And that's, of course, climate change. Now, what about climate change? Climate change is actually not new, the understanding of climate change. In 1834, Fournier identified the greenhouse effect in laboratory studies and theoretically. And in 1896, von Arrhenius actually predicted that the burning of fossil fuels would cause global warming, and he actually predicted how much. And even now, he had a pencil and paper. Now, with all our computer models, there's not much difference between what he predicted and what we're actually predicting today. So in a way, climate change is actually not new. But why is it then, if it isn't new, why is it that it's having this reaction in society? It's actually very seldom that new scientific understanding has the kind of stomach reaction that climate change does. People think they know me because they've seen a picture of me or something. And sometimes I get stopped on the street, and I've had people come up to me and say, I don't believe in the greenhouse effect. Okay? At first, I didn't know quite how to deal with this, but I figured out how to do it. You take the other foot forward, look them squarely in the eye, and say, that's very nice. How do you feel about gravity? But what is it that makes this reaction? Well, I think actually it's just like in the day of Darwin, that most of us now, unless we live in Kansas, have accepted the fact that we belong to a species, an ape species. But the next step that says the combined activities of that ape species can be enough to influence how the very world works, something as huge as the whole globe, that's very, very difficult for many people to swallow. What's more, the idea actually, again, just like Darwin, challenges the economic paradigm of 2011. Because what was it that we traded the slaves in for? Machines. And what did the machines run on? In the first instance, coal. Then we got a little smarter and used gas and oil as well. But fossil fuels. So in some respects, we haven't really come very far since 1859. And I think it's sort of interesting because there's nobody in this room, and probably very few people, at least in Denmark, that even if they aren't scientists, doesn't like to think back to the days of Darwin and say, oh, well, I'd be on the winning team. I would have supported Darwin then. Interesting, because there's not all that many people that are eager to support the scientific understanding about climate change today. What do we know about climate change? Well, this is part of the evidence that we have for how humans are affecting the planet. And this is the data that I think actually caused the scientific community to sit up and say, hey, we got a problem here, guys. This was a Russian and a French research team that went to the Antarctic and took up ice cores. And this was published in Nature in 1999. That's only 12 years ago. This was published in 1999, and the thing about ice cores is there are bubbles in them, and the bubbles in the ice cores contain gas that was in the atmosphere when the bubble was formed. So you can go back to the bubble and ask it how much CO2 or methane or whatever it has in it, and you can make a plot through time. And this goes back 450,000 years. It's now been extended back to 870,000 years. But I like using this because this was the data that really made people sit up and say, whoops, got a problem here. The blue line is CO2 in the atmosphere. The red line is methane in the atmosphere. And you can see it goes down and up and down and up and down and up. And those are ice ages coming and going. But there's something about this in the system. When it gets up to around 280 parts per million, the blue line, the CO2, something in the system says, hey guys, time to go down again. And then it gets down around 180 and something in the system says, hey, time to go up again. Boom. But it doesn't seem to go above that 280 or below the 180. At the present moment, we're at 392. And we're well on our way, actually, with the results that came out about release last year. We'll be well above 1,000 by 2100 if we don't change our rate of emission of CO2. We know that is because of the burning. The primary source of that that's come so high is the burning of fossil fuels, because the isotope signature, the stable isotope signature in that CO2 is the carbon which you burn, which was created millions of years ago. You can follow it. It's got a label on it, and so you can see that the reason that this is so much higher now is because we've released this carbon that had been fossilized millions of years ago. We've released it to the atmosphere. As I say, it was in 1999 these data came out. Interestingly enough, in 2007, the IPCC, which of course is the UN panel on climate change, intergovernment panel on climate change, says there's over a 90% probability that the global warming we're seeing is largely human caused. And actually it was only 2 years later that the world's politicians at the COP15 in Denmark accepted these results and said, we're not going to take the risk by signing the Copenhagen Accord that says we're going to have a 2-degree limit on this. Everybody says that COP15 was a fiasco. I don't think it was. And I don't think it was because it's only 2 years after the scientists got together and said, yes, we really think the evidence is there, that the politicians said, okay, we're not going to take the risk. I grant you we don't yet know how they're going to do this, but at least they didn't ask any questions, despite the fact that there were unprecedented attempts to discredit the science behind climate change around COP15. It was very interesting, actually, if you think about it. In 2009, around COP15, people were stealing scientists' emails. That's illegal. We don't know today who it was that stole those emails. We know that all of the scientists that had their emails stolen were exonerated. There was no problem. There's been lots of studies after, trials afterwards. They've all been found not guilty in doing anything wrong. But who was it in the international press that was the bad guy? Was it the one that stole the emails? No, it was the scientists. In 2010, 1 year later, when WikiLeaks was stealing emails from the US embassies, who was the bad guy? The US embassy? I don't think so. Interesting, very interesting that the way that works and the change between 2009 and 2010. But climate change is not the only sign that we have that humans are influencing how the planet works. There's 12 pictures here. I don't expect you to read them all. I'm going to help you with them in the moment. What you need to know, and this comes from a book that I was an author on in 2004, what you need to know here is that all of these pictures are built up in exactly the same way. They all start in 1750 and they all end in 2000, and they all tell you something about the human enterprise. We'll start at the top. That's global population, growth in GDP, direct foreign investment. Second row, damming of rivers, use of fresh water, artificial fertilizer consumption. Third row, numbers of people in cities, paper consumption, numbers of McDonald's restaurants as a proxy for globalization, number of motor vehicles, number of telephones, and international tourism. Now you can see there's been a huge increase in the human enterprise in that time. Now let's look at the Earth system itself. These are all things that you can measure in the Earth system. But figures, by the way, are built up in exactly the same way. They all start in 1750, they all end in 2000, and they all tell you something about the planet that we're living on. And up on the top three, those are three different greenhouse gases. It's CO2, nitrous oxide, and methane. If you get to the next row, it's the size of the ozone hole. It's the increase of temperature in the northern hemisphere, flooding events, the percentage of fish that we use commercially that are either overexploited or fully exploited. The middle one in the third row is interesting, actually. That is where you remove mangroves in Southeast Asia in order to build shrimp farms, so all of us can go down to our local supermarket and buy tiger shrimps. So that's that's the shrimp farm production in Southeast Asia. Then we have oxygen depletion events, such as the ones we have outside the Danish waters, but it's a global problem. The felling of tropical rainforest, the conversion of wild nature into farming land, and the loss of global biodiversity. Now, you don't need a PhD in order to be able to see that there is a correlation between what we showed on human activities and what we're seeing in the Earth system. But all of you are well enough educated to know that a correlation in itself does not show cause and effect. After all, the number of storks in Germany increased at the same time that the birth rate went up, and I hope I won't disappoint any of you if I tell you we don't have any evidence that it was the storks that brought the babies. Now, having said that, I don't have time to go into all of these cases, but in every single case, with the exception of the great flooding events, there is a very well documented scientific case that it is cause and effect. It is human activities that are causing this change in the system. And why? What is it? What's the root cause? Well, the root cause, we're going back now to the fact I started by saying that humans are dependent on natural resources for their survival. The root cause, of course, is that our demand for resources is approaching the supply of the resources, the global supply of the resources, partly because we're 7 billion people now, and we'll be 9 or 10 billion by 2050, and partly because many of us have a very, very high standard of living. All of this caused Nicholas Stern, a very well-known economist from England, to announce at a meeting that was here in Denmark in 2009, business as usual is dead. It is not an option. And this is why I'm saying not that you can, I'm saying you have to. Now, I say that our demand for resources is exceeding supply. And most of you, when you think resources, you think, okay, we're talking about metals, we're talking about the rare earth metals that we need to do some of our electronics, we're talking about oil and gas, those are material resources, or what we call here provisioning resources. Those are interesting resources because I don't know whether we have the right price, but at least we're able to get a price into our economic models. But we have other kinds of resources. We have what I'm calling here supporting and regulating services. Now, what are supporting services? A supporting service could, for example, be the bees that go around and pollinate for us, because without them, we'd be really lost. We don't have a price for them we can put into our economic models, do we? And then we have these what are regulating? Well, regulating could be, for example, a common global garbage dump for greenhouse gas waste that we have on this planet. And when the politicians say we're going to keep the human-caused global warming to within 2 degrees, then the scientists can say, oh, well, then we know how big that resource is. We also know that it's half filled. We also know who filled the first half. And in fact, what you discuss in the COP process is who's going to get the rights to the second half. But again, we don't have any good way of getting an economic price or a price on those kinds of resources into our models. I was involved in a study a few years ago where we tried to take some of these provisioning and supporting resources and to calculate what is the supply. How much could humans take without actually challenging or without pushing, without increasing risk, without having a substantial risk that something very major would happen in the state that the planet is in. Now, I don't have time here to go in and explain about what we did and how we did it. I can refer to the paper for that. What I want to show really is the sort of bottom line from it all, where we went and we identified nine different resources that we think we need to keep our eye on. And we also, for 7 of them from the scientific literature, we identified or proposed where we thought the limit was, the sort of the fence. Where should we not go beyond if we don't want to have a huge risk of the whole thing collapsing around us? We didn't for chemical pollution or for particles in the atmosphere because we didn't think there was enough evidence. But the rest of them, that's given by the black line here, and we just put, for convenience, we put the particles and the chemical pollution line on, but you'll see no colors. If you look at the human demand for those resources pre-industrially, it's that little bitty yellow button in the middle. So we really didn't need to worry about the fact that there was these resources were actually limited because our demand was so little compared to the amount there. As you go into the Green Revolution, you see that you begin to move out of these axes here. And by the 1970s, the nitrogen cycle was more messed up than we think. I mean, it's on the wrong side. The nitrogen cycle is much more messed up than the carbon cycle by human activities. And we go all the way through here, and you can see for 3 of these resources, we think we're on the wrong side of the line. That doesn't necessarily mean something awful is going to happen. You can have high blood pressure or be a smoker, and it isn't guaranteed that you're going to get a serious illness, but there's a big risk in it. So that's why we put blood pressure down. That's why we ask people to stop smoking. And when we do that, then the risk of getting these smoking-related diseases goes down to almost the same level as a non-smoker. So this gives us, suddenly, science is giving us the opportunity to actually look and see at that the resource and the supply, we're getting into this problem with resource and supply, or demand is greater than supply. Now, a lot of people, at least in this country, we have at least one party that says, well, we're only 5.5 million people here, and it isn't us, and it's really the Chinese or the Indians we should worry about. In fact, the human impact on the planet is a function of, it says equal here, I'm sorry, a function of population, affluence or wealth, and technology. And we helped National Geographic do a graphic here in March that you've got 3 axes here. The yellow one is the population, green one is our wealth, and the red one is technology. And if you look down on the little bitty box in the bottom, you can see the whole box here, that's how much humans are impacting the planet. The little bitty box in the bottom, that's the way it was in 1900, and the longest axis was population. You go up to 1950, the box is about twice as big, but still almost insignificant compared to where we are today. And again, the population line is the most important in that. In 2011, our impact is massive, but the longest line is the green line. It's the wealth line. So there's a lot of ethical questions in this as well. Okay, rounding up, for the first time in human history, the demand for some essential natural resources is beginning to exceed supply. And that has two corollaries. One, environment can no longer be regarded as being distinct from economic interests. Natural resources are our currency. None of you would use more money than absolutely necessary to buy a good or a service. All of you are using more natural resources than are required. That also means that future economic growth can only be based on more efficient resource use and/or the development of alternatives for resources where supply cannot meet demand. And this is where green innovation comes in. We can also quantify sustainable development. It is a question of bringing the demand for resources to within the global supply. That requires all sorts of sciences in order to be able to do. I'm going to skip this one over as we're running out of time. This is a paper I was just involved in. It's an AMBIO that you might be interested in, where basically we're saying that we need to fundamentally alter our relationship with the planet and begin to actively become stewards of the planet. There's also a McKinsey study that I helped on that's coming out at the end of this month that actually shows the economic consequences of not curtailing resource demand. So putting it all into perspective, our Earth has been here for about 5 billion years. Our species in its present form for something like 250,000 years. If you say 25 years per generation, that means there's been about 10,000 generations, and most of those generations lived in caves. During the course of the last 1 to 2 generations, humans have documented through research that a major step in their development, which was taken 6 to 8 generations ago when animal power was replaced by machines, was jeopardizing their own habitat. And this is where I think we differ. I said in the beginning, hey, wait a minute, maybe we haven't gotten very far since 1859. I mean, it's the same sort of problem we're dealing with. But in 1859, people didn't know how humans were influencing the planet. Today we know it. And that knowledge gives both the power, and I would also argue the responsibility to manage and to change the human-Earth relationship. And that, as I've tried to emphasize, requires a change in focus from maximizing the value of individual natural resources using an outdated economic paradigm to focusing on minimizing the impact of human resource use on Earth system function, and that requires green innovation. A lot of people think green growth and green innovation has something to do with climate. It does, but it's a much, much, much bigger problem, and there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't think you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, if you don't mind, can we take 1-2 questions?
Yes, if you've got time. I know I went a couple of minutes over.
Guys, any question? Do we have a mic going around? Yeah, what in the back?
I have a small question.
Sorry, just 1 sec.
Yeah, I have a small question. You were talking about business as usual is not an optional. And regarding energy, what alternatives do you think right now are in terms of energy for oil, gas, and renewable energy?
Yeah. That's your question, and I don't mean to be critical, but your question reflects the way we're used to thinking. Because right now, we have an energy system which is primarily based on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are very easy, and they've got a high concentration of energy, and you can store them. So you don't need more than one kind of energy. We can be completely dependent on one source, really, as long as we can get that source. And the problem is we're not going to be able to get cheap access to that source in the future. Right now, we regulate our energy system totally on the production side. And that means that the energy system here in Denmark is actually geared to meet the energy demand on Christmas Eve. And the rest of the year, much of the stuff is sitting there waiting for Christmas Eve. Now, that's a really stupid way to run a system. But we're used to thinking that way. So everybody says, is it going to be wind? Is it going to be sun? Is it going to be... No, it has to be a bouquet. Because it has to be all of the energy sources that are out there that become economically feasible. Because, for several reasons. One, none of the sources that we have at the moment, unless you want to count nuclear, but nuclear is actually the most expensive you can go to. But none of the sources that we have out there at the moment can be regulated in the same way as the fossil fuels. So we've got the sun would be the best. I think the sun will be the one in 100 years, hopefully 100 years. But we have a way to get there, to get there before we can utilize the sun. So you'll need the ones that there isn't sun all the time, there isn't wind all the time, there isn't wave all the time. So I think we're going to, at least in this transition period, until we can get sun to work, I think we're going to need all the ones that we can get. And of course, one size doesn't fit all. What may be good for Denmark is not necessarily what's good for Spain. So I think different countries will have different energy mixes.
Okay, great. Thanks for your answer. And thank you again for having come to our event.
Thank you.
And okay, so I invite the 3 startups of the second session to come on the stage. Greengo, Pinoled, and Bushman project. And again, give applause to Katherine Richardson. Thank you. So, Greengo. Are you from Greengo? Yeah. Okay. Very nice to meet you. Okay, so pitch. So you guys are gonna listen to this company 3-minute speech. And we start with Greengo, Pinoled, and then Bushman project. So.
Yeah, just a second. I think I need a mic or something like that.
Yes, I think you do. Wait a minute. There is one here. So, there you go.
Does it work?
Yes.
All right, we'll try again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Energy Green.
Entrepreneurship goes green.
Entrepreneurship goes green, yeah. I have to remember the name. My name is Borten Vaggi, and I'm one of the co-founders at Greengo Energy. Greengo installs PV solar systems on commercial rooftops, from where we supply our customers with solar power to a fixed price that is lower than you pay. That is lower than the price that you pay for normal electricity at your energy company. So basically, Greengo operates as a decentral green energy company. Imagine this is your building. What happens in here, that is your concern. You want to make sure that you have stable production, and you want to make sure that the price that you pay for your energy is as low as possible. You prefer to have green electricity, but it's not a necessity. What happens out here is basically not your concern, and this is our business and our core competence. We operate these power plants just like Dong operates the big power plants from where you get your energy today. For us to be able to supply the customers with stable production and cheap prices, we have established cooperations with some of the industry's leaders within energy. Here among Danfoss, Nykredit, SRU Solar from Solar Valley in Germany, and also Dong Energy. We believe that we can be a part of supplying Denmark with the 2 to 3 terawatt solar power that Danish experts believe has to be a part of the climate strategy in 2020 for Denmark. And this can be done if we can supply Denmark with cheap prices on energy. Because just like as Katherine, she was pointing out, one of the key factors with energy is wealth. That means price. So if you can't get green energy cheaper than you get your normal energy, then you're probably not going to change, especially within a climate or financial crisis. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Even faster than 3 minutes. Now it's time for Pinoled. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Peter Poulsen, and I'm from DTU Photonics. This mic really stinks. But anyway, we are starting up a spin-off company from DTU Photonics, which is called Pinoled, and we are making high-quality LED lighting for a museum. And our first customer is actually the Queen, and we have made 21 installation on the what is this called, the crown jewels at Rosenborg Castle. The Queen had a problem, which is the same as all the conservators in Denmark. We have 20% of our displayed objects in the museums being gold and amber and stuff where The reddish part of the spectrum is very important to show the objects as beautiful as you can. And here you use incandescent light bulbs, which has a very short lifetime. It uses a lot of energy, and there's a heat problem which actually destroys the objects. And these light bulbs are phased out due to government regulation in 2012. And there was nothing on the market that could display the objects as beautiful as they liked. So we come up with a solution which is called PNULED, which is made out of LED technology. It has a 90% energy reduction, which is very good. And it has the 50 times longer lifetime, and the heat problem is totally eliminated. And there's no colored shadows and glare, which there very usually is when you make LED system. And we have a patent on the optical technology, which is important for the business. We are addressing the markets, of course, in Denmark first. And there's a lot of museums and jewelers and a shitload of other people using these display cases, where we try to go in now. Our system is much more expensive. It's less the solar cell business. You start up paying a lot of money, but then you get the money back for what you save on the energy prices and changing of the light bulbs. It's actually also very time consuming with high wages in Denmark, and you also have to buy a shitload of light bulbs. With our technology, we can make all kinds of lighting in the color triangle. That means that we can go for other markets also with our technology, giving high color quality, high energy efficiency, no heat problem, and long lifetime. Can I use a little of your time? Because what we are going for in the next products here is addressing the markets for dynamic lighting. People want to have dynamic lighting inside their offices because then they work more efficiently. That's really what your boss would like you to have. We're going into markets where we're trying to solve diseases problem, which is associated with lighting. You could take out parts of the spectrum that doesn't make you sick, or you could put in parts of the spectrum so you actually treat your diseases. Winter depression is an example, and also acne and rosetta, so you can actually be treated.
Sorry, you have 15 seconds?
And we couldn't get a picture of the Queen, but we, yeah.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You can finish?
I can finish? I did it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, great. Right on time. Thank you so much. You can pass the microphone. Okay, she has it ready. And to conclude with, Bushman project. You have to run a presentation. Just click enter. Okay, Bushman project.
Thank you, Dario. I'm here to present, my name is Jakob. I'm here to present you with a project that I'm making in Africa. This is called Bushman Living. That picture didn't work. The country that I'm working in is the smallest country in Africa. It's called Gambia. It's an agricultural project, and the reason why I'm doing it is because I found a pea in Africa that they didn't know they could use. So I started getting my best friend in Africa to help me collect some peas. He showed me his knowledge of the bush by inviting me there and showing me what they were actually already doing with banana plantations, how they would make their own food. Now the special thing about the pea is that it binds nitrogen to the soil. And my background being in farming, I realized that this was a very important thing that we humans could use. We can actually build our own ecosystem, and we can use that for agriculture. So we can take desert and we can turn it into a forest, and we can pillage the forest for fruits, which means that we can actually replace modern agriculture with something which is 10 times more efficient. So I'm also a geek, and then I stumbled on a technology which is hacker stuff. Literally, you use can. In this case, they're using a coffee can as a directional antenna. So what we can do is we can make a wireless LAN area network, and we can connect all the villages with a single solar panel and a rugged tablet and a CAN antenna. And what we can do is we can build a communication system within the village. And once you have the training center for the agricultural school, for the permaculture, which will be the agriculture of the future, you'll be able to have a communication that can teach them this innovation of agriculture. So essentially all of the young teenagers will be early adapters of this technology. They will go to schools, they will learn permaculture. They don't have to learn how to read and write all these things first. So that's the basic of the project. Now, I've built a business case around this, presenting it to corporate businesses. They're very interested in these forests. They actually want to buy lemons at 2-cent value and sell them again at a $1 value. So I presented this last night to Connectors Cup and actually came in second, which was pretty cool. So now I have an advisory board, which means that all I'm looking for is a little bit of pre-seed capital, and we can probably revolutionize the world by having business built around permaculture as a new agricultural system. And what it leads to is that, well, we've done a little bit of calculation, and it means that we can live sustainably at least for the next 8,000 years, if that's enough for you to begin with. That's what I do. And I'd like to tell you more. I have a drawing over there, but I didn't have time, so thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.